from the beginning. I am a board member and in charge of research for Urban Gorilla. So we will split the presentation. We will split our time. So me, the economist, I will start, and I will just give you a bit of background information, a little bit of theories, what is entrepreneurship. While we are talking about that, then you will have the story about Urban Gorilla that we call Synchronicity, talking about an entrepreneurship journeys, and we will finish by some tips and challenge of creating a new organizations. This is linked to a seminar workshop we will do in the summer. So if you're interested, you can contact us later. We will do a workshop on entrepreneurship, the city, and urban planning. So I will start, then I think it's Veronica, and then it will be Teresa. You can stop anytime. So I heard that, okay, it's the Center for Entrepreneurship, but maybe like some students, they are not very familiar of what is entrepreneurship. So I look at some numbers and I will give you some very simple definitions. So you can go and surf online and look at the word of, what is entrepreneurship. So I can give you some number. The first number is there are around 388 million entrepreneurs around the world. So it's something that is quite big. Among 54 countries were surveyed by something called the Global Entrepreneurship Monitors. And they went to many countries, and Cyprus is one of those countries. So there are around 17% of Americans who are entrepreneurs, meaning that they created their own company or they are managing a company that is less than 3 years old. Cyprus number is quite high, it's around 9%. So it means like around 9% of the workforce is involved in a new company or is managing a company that is less than 3 years old. In Britain, it's around 5%. And I'm wrong with it. So it's 17 America, 12% Cyprus, 9% in Britain, and 5% in Japan. So the first thing you can take home is in Cyprus, there are a lot of entrepreneurs. So this is 2019. If you go back in the number, the last study was 2017. And at the time, it was around 5% in Cyprus. So in the last 2 years, there was a huge push in entrepreneurship in Cyprus. So one explanation could be, okay, there is a lot of new technologies, a lot of new opportunities. This is the good side of the picture. Then maybe the most dark side of the picture would be that there is a big crisis nowadays. So if you don't find a job, maybe you will create your own companies. So maybe some of you are students, you are thinking what to do in the future. So one way maybe is to go in the big multinational companies and to have stock options and things like this, or is to create your own business. And today we will focus especially on creating your own business in the social sector. Next, Teresa. So what is entrepreneurship? Maybe you recognize from my accent, I'm a French. And I teach entrepreneurship in Japan. And I used to teach it in France as well. And there is a quote that I like from former President George W. Bush. The problem with the French is that they don't know the meaning of the word entrepreneur. So the first thing I can tell you is, you get few things, and after there's some reference you can look by yourself. Next slide. So entrepreneurship, what it is, we could say, is what entrepreneurs do. And the word actually comes from French. The word comes from 1437. And if you look at the dictionary of the French language, the first definition is a person who is active and achieve something. Then the definition moved to the 17th century, and it moved to a person who take risk. So there is this idea of risk-taking. And you will see today with the story of Urban Gorilla that you have to take a lot of risk if you want to start your own business. Next slide. Sorry, it's a bit loud at the back. I apologize. What is entrepreneur? So then we move in the English language. It only arrived if I say so, in 1755. And the first definition of an entrepreneur is an adventurer, someone who seeks occasion of hazard and put himself in the hand of chance. So at the beginning, there was the idea of taking risk, taking chance. And only in the 18th century, the concept of an undertaker was kind of replaced by the concept of a businessman. Next slide. I don't want to be too professory, so I will move a lot forward. And there is one paper you can look at. It's a paper from 2000, The Promise of Entrepreneurship at the Field of Research. If some of you are doing research, this paper has been cited 17,000 times. So it's quite a lot, meaning that if you do any research on entrepreneurship, this is the paper you have to cite. And if you don't cite it, it means you didn't look very well. And the definition of these two American scholars, Venkatalanam, very difficult to pronounce, and Scott Shane, is an entrepreneur, or the field of entrepreneurship is the one that look at opportunities. So again, a keyword you have to remember, and after, when you will look at the presentation, have this idea of opportunity in your mind. Entrepreneurship is to bring opportunity into existence. And I think it's something very important. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the idea is to look for opportunities. So if you're a student, you're learning many things, and maybe you will see from what you learn some opportunities. And then if you pursue them, you will become an entrepreneur. Next slide. So very quick definition, and maybe some of you know it quite a lot. Academic definition, going to this Venkatalam and Scott Shane, is entrepreneurship is looking for opportunity without regard to the resource people are controlling. So this is the idea of the poor entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneur is the one who has the idea. The entrepreneur is the one who is looking for opportunity, but you don't necessarily have to have a lot of money at the beginning. This is usually at the next stage. If you want to grow, you have to look for the money. But at the beginning, you can start with a very little amount of money. If you talk to the people who are funding venture capitalists, for them it's how to bring an idea into a business. And it's very important. And nowadays there is more and more venture capitalists and more fund around because of global phenomena. So we are awash with cash nowadays, with quantity easing. All the central banks are printing money. The economy doesn't know what to do, and a little bit of that money is going to entrepreneur. So what is an entrepreneur? It's somebody who will integrate all the resources that are available, money, people, business model, and strategy, and will turn an idea into a business model. And we will see that today with Urban Gorilla. Next slide. So here, like, just to give you an idea of what I would say, like the two dimension you have to look at if you're looking at entrepreneurial activities. On the horizontal axis is if you're generating money, if you're generating value for other people. It could be customers, it could be employees, it could be the government. And on the vertical axis is the value you keep for yourself, the value that is kept for the entrepreneur. So most of the entrepreneur, I would say, around the 388 million number I gave before, is what we call self-employed people, or what I would call subsistence entrepreneurs. Let's say you will create a small bakery, you will open a peliptelo, you will make a coffee. Like a lot of people now in Cyprus, they open a coffee shop. You will open your coffee shops. So you will create a little bit of value, but I mean not too much, because many people are doing the same thing. And yourself, it's very unlikely that you will become very rich, because it will be very difficult to keep the value you generate. So if you want to create a bakery, if you want to create a coffee shop, you will be an entrepreneur, but it will be what I will call, you will be self-employed, because you have no other jobs, or maybe because you want to work for yourself. An entrepreneur is somebody who will capture much more value. It's somebody who will have an idea, maybe using technology, and will be able to get a lot of the value created going back to his organizations. And what we will look today is some people who are creating a lot of value for society, but they don't keep a lot for themselves, because their goal is not to enrich themselves, but the goal is to make society better. It is what we call social entrepreneurs, and it's what we argue Urban Gorilla is. Next step. I nearly finished, then we will go in the case studies. So if you talk about entrepreneurship, and I remember when we started Urban Gorilla 6 years ago, we were thinking, okay, maybe we should make a business model. Like in the comic book Dilbert, maybe you know about like the craziness of working in the company. You have the boss come and say, you have to create a business plan for a new product, for a new business line, for a new idea, for a new NGOs. So usually you take some post-it, you take a map, and you say, okay, how I'm supposed to do. There's one thing I like quite a lot, which is called the business model Canva, that was developed by two researchers in Switzerland, Yves Pinier and Alex Osterwalder. You can find much more at the website stratetizer.com, and they give you a lot of tips of how to organize your idea. And the last point I want to finish is, I say before, the entrepreneur are the people who create value. And I want to finish on this idea of value. Next slide. So here it's something I use in my class. I call it the red rubber ball, but I forget to have the ball with me. But let's say I have a blue ball here. And what is the value of these things? How much will you give me for something like this, a fluffy ball or a red ball like this? How much money will you give me to buy it?
2-3 euros.
Okay, so you give me 3 euros because it's fluffy, it's nice. I will sell it to you for 3 euros. Okay. And I might make a small profit. Anybody else? Maybe you will give me a coffee and I give it to you. Maybe you give me 50 cents and I will still be happy. And here on the image, you have a red rubber ball. It's something you can buy at Mavros, or it's something you can buy at, I forget the big shop outside Nicosia where you have all the things made in China. Jumbo. And you can find it for a Jumbo, yes. You can find it at Jumbo, 3 red rubber ball for less than 1 euro. And usually when you're trying to make something, the most important thing is to have what is called in management a value propositions. You have to sell your idea and to show that it creates value to the potential users. Now, if I tell you, and maybe we don't have time, but try to think about it, you have to sell this ball for 20 euros. Do you think it's possible to sell a red rubber ball for 20 euros?
Yes.
How will you do it?
It depends on the current situation. What will this red ball actually do for you? Maybe if you buy the 20 euro ball, it might give 10 euros back to people in Africa. I don't know. So it depends on how you market it.
Yeah, it's all your market. So it is what is your value proposition. So one thing would say the ball is not only a piece of plastic. The ball has a meaning. And the meaning is maybe it is made in Africa and it will be fair trade. Some of the money will go back. And maybe you can increase a little bit the money. After, you have to think of many activities where you will sell it. If you sell it at Jumbo, I don't think you can sell it at 20 euros. So maybe you have to think about the channel you will sell it. You have to think about your customers. Maybe a young student will not want to buy it. And let's say, like, I have a ball like this, and let's say you can make massage with the ball. Maybe it's linked to this idea of trigger points in the body. Maybe you get it with a small manual and explain you that if you use the ball, you will have less pain. And maybe if you buy it in a nice box, and maybe if you see a video of opening the box on YouTube, and maybe if it's prescribed by your doctor and you buy it in a pharmacy, and there is some statement from Nicolas Cage saying that he used it before all his movies, and that's why it's so successful. So you will create an idea of wellness, and that's why maybe Nicolas Cage came to Cyprus to have this rubber ball, because he felt it was so powerful. So value proposition is, you can sell a lot of things in a market, but if you are trying to compete heads-on, a plastic ball, the price on the market would be 1 cent. But you can sell it much more if you create, let's say, a meaning or if you create a usage for it. And if you're going into the health domain, it will be much more expensive, of course, because you believe that you will improve your health, so you will be able to pay a premium. Same thing now for NGOs. If you say, I want to change the world, you're not the only one. So you have to show how you will want to change the world. And you have to create your value proposition as an individual, a self-employed entrepreneur, as a social innovator, or as somebody who wants to be in other type of entrepreneurships. Next slide. And it's what I was saying, is this idea of pivoting. The red ball is not a red ball you want to see. You want to sell a proposition to your customer. You want to sell a proposition to your user. You want to make their life easier. And now we will have the example of Urban Gorilla. And I think that they will explain through design thinking, through talking with users. Maybe you know some of their project. The idea is to bring a better life to the people of the city. And now I will pass the mic, the virtual mic, to, I think, Veronica. Next. Okay, now I had this, but that was too long. You can, I think we will send you the slide, and I always put the reference at the bottom. So 4 things important for an entrepreneur is to have passions. Without passion, I don't think you can make it. You have to be concentrated on your product or on your services. You have to execute well, and you have to be ready to fail. And I like to say in my class, if you don't fail, it means you didn't try enough. Thank you. Veronica, now it's your turn.
Yes. Thank you, René, for this introduction. So listening to you and what an entrepreneur is, the explanations you gave, it gave me this image that it's somebody who is like juggling in a circus. He looks to be like an individual who sees the world differently and envision a future better than others can envision. And they perceive risks that that other people are not willing to take. So what is entrepreneurship? It's about innovation, and it's about finding the right resources, and it's a capacity to mix different creative ideas together. So after you go through the stages, what you hope is to bring to generate a novel system or a novel product, an innovative service, or a remarkable building. Next. So I would like to ask you the question, if you know, what is the difference between a traditional entrepreneur, like what we have been talking until now, or a commercial entrepreneur, and what is a social entrepreneur? Did you ever came across this term before? Anyone during your studies at the Center of Entrepreneurship? So no answer. So I will. Yes?
I don't want to be the only one talking, but
it's okay.
Yeah. So social entrepreneurs, it's for you innovate for the good of the people, but the profit making entrepreneurs are the one who profit from their work.
Yeah, as this diagram show us, it's a bit like this. But you can also be a social entrepreneur and be profit making. But what this diagram show us is that as we move towards the idea of making more profit, we are losing on what our objectives and on what our mission is about. So a social entrepreneur is someone who start to feel some gaps, some social gaps usually, that cannot be filled in the market from the commercial entrepreneur. So the main interest of social entrepreneurs, one can argue, is not to make a profit, but is to change the system and to improve the society. Next. So I love this quote from this book called "The Power of Unreasonable People." That the two authors argue that social entrepreneurs are men and women who seek profit in social outputs where others will not expect profit. And they go on to explain that the social entrepreneurs ignore evidence to suggest that their enterprises will fail and attempt to measure results which no one is equipped to measure. So it means that even though some social entrepreneurs are prone to failure, they still go on believing that they will carry on their enterprise successfully. And why is that? Is as George Bernard Shaw said, that the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. So using this quote, we can sort of understand the passion of social entrepreneurs to found a social enterprise, except going the traditional way of making a profit-making business. Okay, next slide, please. I would like to give you an example of such a social enterprise. This one example is actually an award-winning social enterprise. That's why I would like to present it to you. Plus, also that is a very dear friend who is running this social enterprise. It's called People of the Sun. And we will probably have Maria, who is the CEO of the enterprise, with us in the summer workshop. So what Maria does with People of the Sun, she runs a business in Malawi, which is one of the poorest countries in Africa. And she works there with artisans, reviving their local techniques of basket weaving. So through business innovation and collaborations with designers, international designers, they are managing to change the consumer perception about the value of this, talking about value that René talked before. So because they work with international designers, the value of this project have changed, and now these products are sold in the international market. People of the Sun has developed what they call a circular value chain, which generates social and economic opportunity for the artisans themselves, who are at the bottom of the supply chain, while they provide the market with highly desired and high quality home decor and furniture. Next. And a more familiar local example that you might be aware
Veronica, can I just say one comment?
Yes.
And for the student, and to talk about this art of failure, the CEO of People of the Sun, she went to Malawi, and her goal was to help to empower women. So she wanted to work with women to create this beautiful product. And you see the picture of a man. When she arrived there, she realized it was nearly impossible to do what she wants with women, at least on a short to medium term. So she started to work with men, because it's the only one who could work in, at least with a society as it was. And she started her business helping the men, and after she helped women. So she had to change, she has to adapt. She would have arrived and say, okay, I cannot help women, let's leave the country. But she decided to stay, and now it's very successful. So sometimes you have to adapt. So adaptation is very important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, René. Yes, and we are here to this more familiar example, I guess you all heard of it, which is Ayaskebi, who they produce and pack organic products while also running a rehabilitation program for persons who are struggling with drug abuse. Next. Another very, very important point I would like to bring up here as we're talking about social enterprises is about the social enterprise status in Cyprus, which I don't know if you are at all aware of this during your studies, is that until December 2020, there have been no social enterprise status in Cyprus. So what we see on the screen is an article published by Cyprus Mail only a couple of weeks ago. And the article was referring to how only recently we have acquired, social enterprise acquired their own legal framework. So this was introduced in the parliament in 2013, but following multiple delays, modifications, and debates, they were only able to approve the status of social enterprises in December 2020. So in Cyprus, this is something very, very new, but it's not a new creation. In Europe alone, there are at this moment over 2 million social economy enterprises, which make the 10% of all the business in the European Union. So going back to Urban Gorillas, when we founded Urban Gorillas in 2013, there was therefore no such status as social enterprises at the moment, which might have felt better our missions. As many bureaucratic procedures dictate in Cyprus, you are either black or white. In Cyprus, it's very difficult to find something in between. So you could either run a traditional business or you could be a non-for-profit, an NGO. As you can see in the slide, between a non-for-profit and a business, we can find different varieties of other business, different grades of social entrepreneurial business, moving from non-for-profit to business. But in Cyprus, it was either the white or the black. So we decided to go for the non-for-profit that were fitting better our missions statements. Next. Urban Gorillas was founded in 2013, and as I said, as our interest was to have a social impact, we were categorized as a non-for-profit company, an NGO, but at the time, many people confuse this with charity, which is something that is very different, and we would like to stress this because a charity is something very important and helpful for the society because they support and help many people, but very rarely they can make a social impact. While social enterprises are there and they are goal-driven to make changes. So Urban Gorillas focuses on social impact, even though we don't produce an economic activity that generates profit. We will talk about this a bit later. Yet we are managing to stay sustainable and financially viable for the moment. We're going to talk more about our work in the second part. Now I would like to take you through the journey of how it was set up and why, and we will start with why we chose Urban Gorillas. I guess some of you have this question. Despina maybe has this question, or somebody else.
I can guess. Can I guess why Urban Gorillas?
Yes, please.
Because I did advertising and brand design. There's a thing called guerrilla advertising where you basically, with radical ideas, you provoke or either kind of unstabilize the current situation. And gorillas, obviously, yes, and urban because of the urban environment. So urban gorillas, I'm guessing, I don't know.
You're guessing very correct, but the guerrilla marketing you're referring to is different from the gorilla. So
yeah, obviously.
yes, but this is exactly where we were departing from, because there is the term urban guerrilla as well. Like there is guerrilla marketing, there is also the term urban guerrilla, which is somebody who fights the government using very unconventional methods, even terrorist methods, to change his urban environment. But as our mission to transform cities into creative and social inclusive hubs require a more humorous but also a powerful approach. So we chose gorillas because we found it humorous, and you could also relate back to guerrilla, which is something very powerful. So in a way, this is a very tactical approach to redefine activism in the city, in the urban realm, and is much less aggressive. Okay, next. So you might not see us going around the city with our gorilla masks. Like this feminist group is called Guerrilla Girls. They are the more activist group for feminist art. It's pictured here, but you might not see us like that going out in Nicosia, but maybe you have seen some of our gorilla projects in the city. And before we move on, I will make 2 points, one about urbanism, one about design thinking. So as you can see in this diagram, I wanted just to point out how complex is the discipline of urbanism. So it's a very complex and very multidisciplinary study, which is about how inhabitants of urban areas interact with their built environment, but it also includes many disciplines that to study the life in cities, from psychology, from planning and design, from engineering about the infrastructure of the cities, to environmental engineering to study air quality or water quality, and etc. So it's a small background information about what is urbanism. And next. And design thinking. So I guess in the Center of Entrepreneurship, you might be already aware or have worked with different design thinking approaches for your projects.
This semester, we didn't have a design thinking workshop, actually. But I guess, I'm sure it was mentioned before in other lectures, and our students must know.
So you're familiar with it? Or partly familiar with it?
I have a question.
Yes, Despina.
I'm not a UCY student. Am I still allowed to be here?
Sorry, you're where?
I'm not a UCY student, but I am familiar with design thinking, and I think you should promote it to students. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, you're welcome. We welcome any attendees from other universities or non-students.
So this diagram sort of describes the very basic methodology that entrepreneurs or people starting a business or people developing an idea, it's a series of steps that you take in order to arrive and to get the best of your idea. So it consists of these steps that emphasize a lot to involve the user at the very, very start of your idea with this step called empathize, which is the first step of the design thinking process, which means to really get to know your users. So you have to connect deeply with them, to talk with them, to interview them, to follow them, to know, depending of the product or whatever you're designing. Then is the second step of how you define the problem, the problem of what you're addressing, which is about generating different ideas. And this is usually done by brainstorming with many people together. And this way you have great ideas that are coming from different people, and by mixing on them and discussing through this collaborative approach, you have different knowledge coming out, and through the mixing of these ideas, you can generate new ideas. So ideate is when you arrive to your idea proposal following the two steps, and you have you are ready to design your proposal, and then it comes a prototype, which you make a small prototype, a sample, in order to present this idea, which you have to go test it back again with your users before you implement it. So these are the basic steps. And one point we didn't mention at the start is that half of our team at Urban Gorillas, no, we mentioned it, Veronica and Teresa, myself and Teresa, are architects. Since our studies in architecture, this method of design thinking, even though it was not called design thinking at all, this is a very trendy term that we use now. This is exactly the different phases that we have used subconsciously due to our training to make any project. So this is also the methods that we adopt because we sort of undertook every step when making an architecture project is exactly the steps we undertake. So this is also the methodology we use in planning and implementing our projects, but also the very basic idea of Urban Gorillas itself. Next. Sorry. And this is just a very simple demonstration of what I was talking before about how do we apply these ideas in architecture, is how a sketch like the one before becomes a prototype, which is this maquette, and then it becomes an idea in a drawing. And then you reach the implementation. So it's exactly next, it's exactly the steps we take to sketch, to talk with the user, to go back and discuss with them and see this is how it works before we arrive at the final product, which is the building. Next. So with this background in architecture, creativity is a major drive in our organization. As I said before, half of our board directors are architects. The other half are from other disciplines. So this is a major drive about the ways these ideas are developed. So Urban Gorillas arrive exactly at this, at the magic moment that this idea just popped in our head. And then a series of fortunate events, one leading to another, made us become entrepreneurs by accident. And now I will describe these steps, how one after the other we ended up founding the organization. So the entrepreneurship journey started with some random encounters at first of a diverse group of people that came together and started exchanging ideas about urban living. So this group of people arrived in Cyprus after their studies. They met by chance and they lately formed the board of directors of the organization. And at the same moment, at this point of this random encounters, there was the economic crisis in Cyprus. It was 2013, and it was the day in March that we woke up, and as you know, we realized that the people having over 100,000 euro in Laiki Bank had lost their money with the haircut. I think, Teresa, you have to press also the thing. There are some images there.
Okay, yes.
So we remember this moment in time as looking at the society that was angry and desperate and lost any faith to democracy at this time. And having just come back from Cyprus from our studies and being in this situation, we realized that it would be difficult to find jobs in Cyprus in our sectors. At the same time, there was we came to understand better our local context in regards to urbanism, and at the moment there was the much debated Eleftheria Square that finally today it is completed. But at the time, we knew that this competition was won in 2005. In 2009, the construction works have begun, but we've seen a local community that was very critical to the design, but nobody is listening to the local community, even though a public space is something that is a powerful tool for democracy and citizens should have a say, something that happens in other European countries. And then there was all these scandals with the square until it finished, that it was stopped. So looking at the way that this square was approached, that trees were cut, that citizens and participation in the planning or decision-making process was absent, and the way that other Cypriot cities are designed in a process that is not inclusive, this was a major trigger point for our thinking. The other important event that happened at the time was we were taking a lot of trips to and walking around cities and imagining how cities can be improved and with what resources. So we were particularly interested in abandoned buildings and how this could become, these buildings could be transforming community hubs. And in the case of this building that you see in the picture is an old Turkish Cypriot cinema in Larnaca near Magenzi. And we were visiting this building and we were fascinated with the potential to transform it into a community hub. And we went as far as to write a complete business proposal, and we had meetings with the mayor of Larnaca that was apparently very interested in the project, but behind our back, he was planning to demolish it and make a car park. And in the end, we didn't manage to transform this building, but it was a very good starting point and a kick to put ideas together. And yes, and the funny thing of the story is that the mayor ended up in prison because he wasn't a very nice guy. And the last thing that happened.
Veronica, there is a question. There are the questions.
Yes.
How do you deal with this power dynamic?
With the authorities, I guess. Well, it's a very difficult question. I don't know if we should get into it now or leave it for the discussion after.
Okay.
Yeah, great question though.
Go on, go on.
So the last thing of these fortunate events that took place, that was the final event that really led us to start the process of setting it up, was an event we went through that was about some funding for NGOs. We didn't even know what NGOs meant at the time. So these were some funds coming from the from Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. They are called EEA and Norway grants. And these grants have an objective to reduce social and economic disparities in the European Economic Area. And Cyprus is amongst the countries that receive funding. So we happened to be there, and there was this call about the thematic of participatory democracy, which fitted exactly, was aligned exactly with what we have been discussing all along with this group of people. So we hurried up in 2 months to start an NGO in order to apply for this funding, because we thought this is the perfect fund to for our ideas to be realized. So there is in Cyprus what is called the NGO Support Center, which is an umbrella in Cyprus for all the NGOs. So you can consult with them, and they offer you guidance of how to set it up. So there was this book of setting up the NGO with all the guidelines. So we follow this book and consulted with the NGO Support Center. Next. And then steps, okay. And then we went into undertaking the different steps that were necessary, like appointing a board of directors of at least 7 people, consulting with lawyers, making logos, publishing in the newspapers. First, you had to register as a profit-making company, and then you remove the limited by making an announcement in the newspaper. And then if no one has any objection, then you are becoming an NGO. So we consult with accountants, and I will not go too much into the details here. And so this is how, in the last minute panic, that is a common characteristic of many entrepreneurs we are talking about, we have talked with. We managed to submit an application for a funding of €100,000. And we formed this very interesting team of individuals together that and we registered as an NGO. And we had lots of ideas and big plans, but we didn't know at all how we will realize them. Next. I think maybe shall we come back to this at the end after we present our work, because I'm worried we might run out of time.
Yeah.
So so to sum it up, we have managed to receive the grant of the €100,000 back then, and to have a break and to move up into the other part, the third part of the presentation. We will have a break so you can look at the video of the work done that was funded with this grant.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think it got slightly stuck. So we're going to go through some of the Urban Gorillas work. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the work, but I think it's a nice transition from the introduction that we had from René, which is on a more of a global scale. Veronica, who gave a personal journey through this, and now we start to see the actual results and connect this again to this process of design thinking that we mentioned earlier on. So in order to see how within each project we identify a problem, an issue, and through prototyping and repeating the cycle, we begin to make to develop ideas and develop methodologies and strategies, and always having in mind the basic idea and the basic interest of the group. So under these series of fortunate events, as Veronica described, Urban Gorillas was created in 2013. It's a non-for-profit. It's a multidisciplinary team. And as the mission statement states, it envisions healthy, creative, and socially inclusive cities. The range of actions are urban interventions, community engagement, activism, research, engaging with artists, engaging with scientists, researchers, students, entrepreneurs, urban activists. The work is local and global. We're part of various projects which are taking place in Europe and in Cyprus. I should mention that Veronica and René are currently in Japan. So right now the part of the team is literally on a global level, and I think this is also part of the challenge, is finding opportunities in possible difficulties and finding a layered way of working and developing new methods. So where a different entrepreneur would probably collapse if part of the team was suddenly moving country. The way that it was addressed with the team is that we opened up to more opportunities, and also in developing an online work where, even in spite of the time difference, we start work at 7:30 in the morning, which is a good time to coordinate with the time difference. Working online has been amazing, both in terms of organizing, of getting projects to work throughout the 24-hour day. So things develop overnight and you come back and there's a whole new development, and there's a truly collaborative aspect to this, which I think is really important to acknowledge and bring up. So don't be afraid of potential difficulties. And I think part of the project and part of what we're doing with Urban Gorillas is always questioning, is there other ways of doing this? So never actually take an answer for granted that things have to be a certain way. People do not have to be segregated. Public spaces do not have to be in a certain way because they're in Cyprus. And I think this is what you'll discover through the work, that there's a constant attempt to change things. And it's little by little that you change things. You don't change things overnight. So So a photograph without the masks in the office. The range of actions, as we mentioned, is usually ephemeral interventions in the city. We do work closely with the municipalities and local authorities, and this has been a very interesting step for us in actually understanding how to legitimize and how to really make an impact and really use opportunities or create opportunities for us to actually have impact within the city. And hopefully in the future, what we would like to see is to actually affect policy making. So this is really going into the future, but what we can do is look at projects that we can do independently. We've managed that. Then we've moved on to working with authorities. We've managed to work with European grants. We've managed to work in collaboration with other NGOs and other organizations. We're working with universities. So some of the projects are...
Despina is asking in the chat if they are supporting.
The municipalities, actually, yes. And I think...
yes, but of course, you don't imagine that, you know, you get lots of money.
No.
They want to support the best they can. Yeah.
I think what they're recognizing is the power of these interventions. And as you'll see later on in some of the projects, if a project manages to have 1,000 people visiting it in 4 or 5 hours, this is an incredible power. And of course, any mayor who wants to have a positive impact in the city will want to optimize on that. So we've been working closely with the mayor of Nicosia because we're located in Nicosia, but we've also done collaborations with Milan, and where there was a project there with an NGO doing similar work to us. But also we've had invitations to collaborate with the mayor of Larnaca. We've seen people in Mesa Guidonia in Limassol, and we've also spoken to people in the municipality in Paphos. So there is an attempt to create these collaborations and to establish a zone where we as an NGO can actually act as a mediator between authority and the general public, which is also an interesting way to begin to see how you can begin to affect it. It's not a bubble. Despina, I think you're speaking, but you're on mute. You can unmute.
I'm saying yes. I think yes, this is really good. This is really, because I think the end goal is to change policy, because it's not that there isn't demand from people. I think it's policy that's stopping people. So I think the ultimate goal is to redesign or reimagine policy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And to establish a structure, where we can actually achieve things. And for us, this is a step-by-step process, trying to break certain ways that things are being done and establish new ways. So we call it creative hijacking, and really is how to use the system in new ways, and not to become systemic part of the system, but to break the system. And I think that's a really important position to take where we're talking about our work. So this idea of creative hijacking, for us, this meant demonumentalizing public space, and we'll talk about public space in a minute, and really connecting and reconnecting with communities and making the communities part of this process. So on the one hand, we have this question of how to begin to talk about catalyzing or facilitating a new process, and on the other hand, we still want to be very spontaneous, creative, and beautiful in these interventions that we're doing. So
a small again parenthesis here is that, I mean, our vision for the future will be to actually following this design thinking again method of working with the users is to creative hijack many city spaces, but using this design thinking method, working with people, using these spaces with residents, with communities and municipalities, and in order to change spaces together with the main users. So this is the future vision of where we would like to go with Urban Gorillas, and how to apply this design thinking method in the level of the community and improving our spaces around us.
I think you just answered one of the questions that people were going to use at the end. So, following the moment of creation or inception of Urban Gorillas, and having achieved the first grant, at the same time, parallel to that, there was an opportunity for a prototype. So how do you begin to test some of the ideas that you're discussing for a bigger project on a smaller prototype, prototypical project with a very small grant of 2,000 euro from the Fulbright Foundation? There was this small project which was going to be realized in collaboration with ACTI, which is an NGO active in promoting environmental sustainability. And Urban Gorillas was invited to create an urban intervention and to create awareness about the Titanogenesis campaign, which is about using cooking oil for biodiesel. And to begin this discussion about public space, about engagement, and about other ways of doing things. So with a very small, very small budget and a very small time frame, Urban Gorillas found an old bus from a junkyard and a metal scrapyard, and began proposing this idea of a green kitchen where vegetables and flowers were growing inside, and the creation of a public space, seating inside in this strange greenhouse garden / kitchen, while the outside of the bus was hosting an artwork by a famous printmaker called Evgenia Vasiloudi. And this was the first time that the Urban Gorillas were intervening in the city, and it was a very nice first step, because it contained various aspects of the work. It contained a participation where people participated in creating it. It was open to engagement and in habitation by the visitors, and it achieved activation of 2 urban spaces, and began by its location there. It began creating new stories and new memories of these places. So we start to discover that one of the key elements of activating public space is to create a shared story or a new story in this space.
It also brought forward the idea of upcycling, of how we can use existing resources that are junk, are really junk, and how you can make something out of nothing, basically.
Yes.
And actually it was funny, because when they invited us for collaboration to create awareness, they were expecting what is happening until now in Cyprus, to print some nice banner and put it in their street and create awareness. But for us, this was an opportunity to say something more about the space itself. Yes.
So at the same time, the video that you saw before, Green Urban Lab, the 18-month long research project begins. It was an amazing project where inflatable structures, bubble structures, were installed in several public spaces. And it was the first time where there was this physical manifestation of a hijacking of a public space. And this happened in two ways. One way with the bubbles going inside these spaces, and secondly, the bubbles hosting activities. So the project took place in an archaeological sites, in museums, museum gardens, and spaces that are typically considered public yet off limits. So the public garden, or the garden of the museum, or the garden of the square in front of the castle in Paphos, or the square in front of the castle in Larnaca, were suddenly overtaken by these strange bubbles, which through an open call hosted several activities which you've seen before. We're using this idea of hijacking again to discuss this, and to enter a discussion in how are we using public spaces, and why are public spaces not open to the public and not open to public activities. Veronica, you want to say something here?
No, yeah, I mean, it's just to add up on what you already stated, that you know, these sites, the castles, and the way they are located in our cities is like an empty and underutilized space, and it's never used by the citizens. So for this, we wanted really to take over and hijack and give it back to the people for their enjoyment, because these spaces are not being enjoyed by the people. And this is also something we want to highlight in the work, to improve people's relationship with their urban spaces and to make them happy while they use them.
I think what's interesting in this project is that Urban Gorillas proposed these inflatable structures, and I should mention here that it was with Plastic Fantastic and the University of Nicosia. And what's interesting is that these structures are not the end result, but these structures are spaces to host other activities. So in a way, the Urban Gorillas are acting as a facilitator for further engagement. And this is really an interesting model of work, which begins here. And a process that's engaging. It's open for engagement. How can we accommodate a wider public? How do we accommodate artists? And how do we enter into a dialogue between the public and the public space? Because one of the main problems that we were finding is that, especially in Cyprus, even though there are public spaces, we don't have the notion of publicness. So in a way, you need to educate again the audience, the general public, to be able to use these public spaces, or to be able to enter and claim them in a way.
And if I may, I would like to add one thing. What I think is very important in all the projects is that we document them. We have publications. I put in the chat one link to a journal of public space. We wrote a book with the help of the University of Nicosia. We participated in conference. We have a website. So everything is being researched. We let other researchers from Frederick University to work on our project as well. So there are some traces. And I think it's very important, but how we could build upon it. Otherwise, it's ephemeral, you do it and things pass. But us in all our projects, we try to integrate research. We try to work with people at university. We try to work with young people to leave some traces. And I think it's very important. And it's part of what we're doing today as well.
And if I can add something to this, is that there's this idea of measuring impact. So what you see here, and I don't know how to manage the volume for this. Sorry, you'll have to listen to it. It's a very small intervention which took place in the youth festival in 2017, and it begins to talk about research and measurement in a transparent and fun manner. So how can we, I'll switch this off now. How can we begin to collect data? How can we begin to collaborate in collecting data, which is sometimes a very mundane process? Can we do this in a fun way? Can we reimagine it and make it fun and interesting also for the audience? So you're not somebody who is being studied, but you're also studying a situation and a context. And I think it's a very small intervention, but we really felt it's important to show it as one of the aspects, the facets of the work that we're doing. And we think it's quite interesting in all aspects of entrepreneurship, in knowing your audience and making a diagnosis of a situation. So okay. So another project which was realized in 2017 in Larnaca Pier, we begin to discuss this idea of surprise, of unexpected locations and urban situations or urban voids that are in need of creative hijacking. And with this situation, it was a series of 5 interventions, and they begin to challenge people's perception on a contested environment, where we're talking about topics of division, segregation, social inequality. It was an open dinner where the passers-by were invited to dine. There was empty seats, every other seat was empty. So all these passers-by joined, and they were all connected by this huge tablecloth, which kind of erased all changes and differences between these visitors, and made the whole dinner table and the participants a unified artifact. It was a very aesthetic, intervention, which, however, it did create a connection, and it was triggering this. Was the first of many projects that we began with this idea of food and connecting through the act of eating, which we'll see later on again. Veronica, you want to add something to this? No. You're on mute.
No, let's go on.
Okay, and I'll start going a little bit quicker. So Incomunicado, again, is a project that we did in collaboration with an Italian film director who came to Cyprus to do a workshop regarding the question of borders and how we contribute to the construction of stereotypes, and how we can use art and other modes of expression to overcome this idea of stereotypes. I think what's really interesting in this situation is that the results of the workshop were presented simultaneously on 2 rooftops in Nicosia on both sides of the Green Line, and using technology to show the other group which wasn't there. And again, it's a very simple use of technology, but it began renegotiating this idea of borders, of location, of time, and began discussing another way of doing things and another way of participating in a project?
Yeah, I think it unified the city, at least for the people who took part on this level, at the top level where there are no borders. We felt unified through this project. But most importantly, I think what this project starts to introduce is the idea that rooftops is the fifth facade of a building, and it's something we often forget. And considering, then we start to question what it would be like if the rooftops was actually a public space. What if actually the rooftops were given back for public use? And this discussion has led us into a big network, European network about rooftops, which is our very new project just starting and that we are part of, about activating rooftops in 9 European cities.
So a small intervention again for another way of thinking about where to screen the results of the workshop actually led us to a prototype in a way of thinking about public space, which then developed into a new European project. And I think this again is very interesting for students to see how even the smallest step can, when tested and when you clearly document it, you can then go on to develop it into a bigger idea. So you have something to assess and really build upon.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, Teresa, because when we've done this event, we didn't know that an international European community will be interested in this small event we run, and suddenly we became part in a big network with 3 municipalities across Europe who are willing to develop this idea in their own cities. And as Teresa was saying, it's very important. You don't know when you are making a small idea take place, even though with a very small action, then it might lead you to somewhere else.
We will go quickly through this a series of projects called Pame Kaimakli. It's a neighborhood festival which has been taking place since 2013 in Kaimakli. It began initially with a group of residents who were self-organizing and organizing street dinners and small activities. And when Urban Gorillas joined the process, because Urban Gorillas is based in Kaimakli, it took part in the first projects called Open Windows, Open Houses, and Open Courtyards, where the first few festivals were small groups of people visiting the houses and getting to know each other and seeing what's the unseen world behind the closed doors. It began to address these beautiful, to present these beautiful courtyards, and began this discussion of, this is the third one, which was the Open Windows, where where performers were playing musical instruments within these homes through open windows. And it began to discuss this idea of public spaces inside and outside the private realm. And why this is important is because this was another one which was using the Fouskopolis and the inflatable structures within the streets, again pushing and creating a new landscape in a way for the activities. The reason why we mentioned the previous Pame Kaimakli was because in 2018 there was a much bigger festival which was called Adopt an Artist. And the reason why we would like to discuss this is because it became it began with a small grant that we won through the Tandem Europe program, in collaboration with an Italian NGO called Non Riservato, who are managing several Italian artists and Italian and French artists, actually, to be precise. And what was interesting was that even though we had a very limited budget to begin with this idea, we started playing with this idea of virtual hosting. And this idea that different homes in Kaimakli could host artists in other countries, even though they couldn't all physically come to Kaimakli. And this developed into this idea that the homeowners and the artists could begin to develop their proposals together. And suddenly the homeowners would be co-curating a project with these strange, wonderful artists in Italy or in France or in Japan, which for us, it was, again, this new idea of participating in a process and developing new creative ways of seeing what a museum might be and what a space of culture might be. So all of a sudden, we started having a huge interest from owners of homes and a huge interest from local artists who wanted to be part of this process. And it was really amazing what happened, because suddenly we had something like 62 activities taking place in this really small neighborhood. And within 5 hours, there was about 1,000 people who went from home to visit these courtyards where there was dance performances, poetry readings, installation in garage sheds, dance performance, projections on walls, children's workshops, installations on rooftops. 92 residents were involved, the ages starting from 18 to 95. And suddenly, and I'll show you this as a closing point to the Πάμε Kaimakli idea. This is how many points were activated within that one evening. And I think this is really an incredible definition of how a neighborhood could become a space for culture. And I think this, for us, was a discovery. So again, a model that we had worked on for several years opened up a new opportunity. And every time, I think this is what happens with a design cycle. When you prototype something and you test the idea, then you can push the limits to a new level every time. And this will go through very quickly, because we started to question how are we engaging the locals in these processes, and is there something that we've missed in terms of community participation? And we discovered that there was these groups of people that were invisible in this festival. And this was the elderly and the migrants, who felt that they were not belonging in this process. So we created this catalyst event, we call it catalyst event, Open Kitchens, where we were using this idea of cooking and eating together to bring people together. And what was...
if we want to put it in the design thinking cycle, this event also acted as our empathizing and ideation process in order to plan the next event. So it was how we got together with the users of these neighborhoods, so many users, in order to be able to plan the next festival with their ideas. Sorry, Teresa. Yes.
Yeah, no. So we had 7 houses with 7 chefs, and these seven chefs were local migrants who took on the role of a chef to manage the dinner. So each home had about 7 to 10 participants. We tried to choose the ages, so it was quite a diverse age group, starting from 18 years old to 85. There was at least 3 people who were 85, so we're not making this up. And what happened was that these 7 homes which were hosting these 7 dinner parties actually became an opportunity to open up the topic of Pame Kai Magli through eating and cooking, and to begin to establish a connection with these people, establish trust, because we're discovering that really if they don't trust you and if they don't know you, it's very difficult to go enter a neighborhood and say, hi, we're here, we want to use you for something. So we're very careful about this idea of the colonial coming into a neighborhood and saying, we will tell you how to live your life. We're really trying to shift things around and really make this idea of empathizing and understanding the inhabitants of the local communities in ways that are much deeper. So our chefs and some instances from the dinners. And I think, and then if we're assuming that was our research stage, the festival that we realized this summer was the moment where we actually put things into action. So several of the people that we met during the dinners are part of the next stage, which was realized last September. Was a series of events which took place again in Kaimakli. The major thematic was food and planting and growing plants, edible plants. The very first event was we discovered a problematic public space which wasn't used by people. There was no shade, there was no space to sit, and there was no reason to be there. So what we did, we created this steel structure, which was a very naked steel structure. And we bought 200 clay flower pots. We distributed into the neighborhood, and we invited them to come together on a specific day for a community planting event. And what happened that day was that suddenly you did have more than 200 people coming into the square, planting together, and creating a communal garden. What this meant was that this communal garden was really had a very strong sense of ownership by the inhabitants. And what you'll see later on is that they really took care of it. It was their baby. So now we're talking 6 months on. There's been no vandalism. There's been nothing broken. And people do go back and they water the plants and they're actually taking care of it. So for us, in terms of putting something into action, was very, very interesting. The festival had a series of plays which took place in the public square, urban dinners. So some of the migrants that we met during the dinners hosted storytelling events and performative dinners. There was also screenings in the square. And through this repetition of 2 weeks of activities in the square, we really gained, we really established a very strong connection with the locals. So this for us, again, is another way of really investing into the market, in a way, into your first users. And of course, the children of the neighborhood went crazy, and they were amazing in helping us in setting up. And I'll be really quick because we're still okay with time. And I'll just add one sentence that every evening these kids were making so much noise, except for Maya, who is right in the center with the red shorts, because it's Veronica and Rene's daughter. So she's the best, she's a star. Every evening these children were riding up and down in their bikes, and they were making a lot of noise, and we were trying to keep them quiet so that the screenings and the plays and the performers would be heard. And what we realized on the 5th evening of events was that all they really wanted to do is be part of it. And they actually came to us and they said, how can we help? When they saw us carrying stuff and trying to set up or take down the evening, they started helping us put things into the storage room. And then we realized that we asked them to be there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon the next day, and they were there and they started to help us. And I think before you start to think that this is child labor, I think what's really interesting is that understanding that there's space for engagement if you give it to them. In terms of a social enterprise which would engage different community groups, we can now say that we feel that this was successful because, yes, we did have performers who were 85 to 95 years old. We did have local migrants who still visit the structure and remember this opportunity that they had to perform and to really show off their skills. There's a wonderful musician that will post a link to some of his videos that you'll be quite interested to see. And somehow this small intervention gave the space a huge value. So for us, this was really important to actually see it and so many months on to still be there and still be valid in the way that it was. And we have reached the end. Veronica, you want to say something?
To sum up everything that was said about our project is that we constantly think of innovative solutions to make better cities and to improve the way we live in our cities, the way also we move from one place to another, that is the mobility of our cities, how we use our public spaces that are important to shape our everyday lifestyle. So these are constant questions that we ask. And you might say that there is a clear and realistic answer or a path for a better city, and this might be a greener city or a cheaper city, a happier city, a healthier city, a more equal, a more productive, or a less polluted or a less lonely city. And the basic exchange that is required is obvious, like cities need to take space from cars, we need to plan more green, we need to make spaces for people to meet, we have to have affordable housing, we have to invest in nature. So while all these are givens, now we have another challenge, and is the current global crisis we're facing with the pandemic. So we have without even solving the basic problems, we have even more problems to face. And so some of these questions we would like to address to you in this summer workshop at the Center of Entrepreneurship, and try together to understand all these challenges of that the city or our cities in Cyprus are facing together. For example, what will happen now to all the office spaces? What will happen if everybody works from home? Will our neighborhoods change? And so on. So we will try together in the workshop to address these challenges, and with your help and collaboration, we hope to find some creative ideas for these problems.
Sorry, Veronica, we have to mention that the summer workshop, it's a part of the summer semester of the University of Cyprus.
Yes.
So students of the university can select the course, and it's 1 week, and get 3 ECTS points to this. We'll be announcing it in May, after Easter, with all the details.
Okay.
Some of the lectures, of the morning lectures, will be open to the public. And also we are planning to open to the public the pitching event, the final day, where the student teams will present their projects. Any other questions or comments? You can raise hands.
It would have been great if other people
Yes.
talked. I don't know. I want to say that I'm currently writing my thesis on parklets. I want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right on the spot.
Yeah, I'm basically reimagining space. I had my first prototype yesterday. I just literally took my umbrella, 2 chairs, and I sat there and I waited for people. I said hello. I counted the amount of people that walked by, the amount of people that stopped, the amount of people that cycled. I did all my research. It's the first prototype. It went well. It was a positive experience. But now I have 1 more year to actually realize the project. And I wanted to be in this discussion because as Urban Gorillas, you already do this. You create the space for people. And so, yeah, I think it's important. Coming from London, I think there is a coming back from studies, I think there is a very big gap. I mean, there is no public space. There is public spaces, but it's what you said, Teresa, the publicness of it all. We don't have that concept in Cyprus. And I think it's important for people to actually open their eyes. It's not about, if you walk, I mean, Nicosia is a beautiful city. If you walk, you can find beauty in every spot. It's just how can actually we enhance that because it's flooded with cars. And yeah, I'm really interested in these topics. I come from an advertising background, but I've tackled problems like branding a cycling scheme, for example, and I found interest in that. And that's when I started exploring the city more and explored London more, and that's where my interest in cities, kind of. Yes, and yeah, it was a great presentation. Thank you so much. Really helped my research in general. Like, obviously, I'll put you as a case study, definitely. But yeah, I hope we can talk more another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do contact us if anything. And it is very important what you're mentioning coming from another background, because this is what discussed earlier at the presentation, that changing the city or working in the urban domain is not only a job of the architects or the economics or the urban planners. And even though there is some disciplines that are very key to changing our city, it is the job of all citizens to participate in order to make this positive impact.
Exactly. And it's when you start to understand that you actually live here. You are the one breathing this air. You are the one affected by this city, and you need to take advantage of it. Like, if I want to sit outside and breathe fresh air, I demand that. I want to demand that, as a citizen, I demand that. Yeah. And I think it's not that we need to, tell everyone. It's not something that you need to tell to people. It's not something like, it's about experience at the end of the day, because if they experience it, if they experience truly clean air or a nice place to sit, no one's going to say, oh, I don't want clean air. No, I don't want public space. You know, no one's going to say that, I'm guessing. But I think if we did provide that, and if we did, it's now, I think it's not the time to have more conversation. I think it's time to have more actions. And yes, I think people in Cyprus always leave the other things to other people. Yeah, it's the job of the architect. It's a job of the government to do that. It's not my responsibility. But I think it's that way of thinking that we need to kind of shift. So yeah, it's really important, and we should have more of these and more people who are interested. And it's not about your discipline or not. It's how you said that everyone is involved within the city. It's where you live. So yeah, sorry for over.
No, please do contact us. We can discuss further. I think we will have a lot in common.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I'm really jealous that you're in Japan. It's really exciting that you mentioned about like, that's already exciting that you're in Japan and you're working like these hours and you're here right now doing this. It's great. And yeah, Japan, I mean, where in Japan, if I may ask?
We are in Tokyo.
Nice.
Would be nice to hear from the people from the Entrepreneurship Center as well. Actually, it was, we usually make lectures to other audiences and for other purposes. So it will be great to have your feedback and your ideas about social entrepreneurship and what was presented to you.
We will send them a questionnaire. We usually sometimes do that to different workshops, but we can prepare one for this workshop because it was the first time that we did the urban entrepreneurship subject. So I'll be bothering them again soon with a questionnaire. Any comments, guys, from C4E people? No.
We hope you're there.
I want to ask a question.
Joanna, yes.
Don't take it personally. Joanna, yes.
If I'm not mistaken, you said that you randomly found the NGO support center, and that's how basically it all started.
Right.
I wanted to ask, because this is my feeling in Cyprus, a lot of things are not very organized. What would you advise maybe someone who wants to do something similar, but they don't have the funding? Because I guess you are kind of lucky to find that NGO.
It's also 10 years, almost 8 years on. So
okay,
the structure is actually a lot more, there's more structures in place right now, and there's more help. But the truth is that in order to find the grants and in order to do the applications, it takes a lot of research. And one thing that we can tell you guys is that if you're looking for European or other international grants, you'll probably do 10 before you get one. I think the fact that Urban Gorillas started with the first one is just amazing. It's incredible. This is not the norm. What usually happens is that you would probably apply to 10 or 15 even before you get that break. And what you do is really you refine your idea, and you start to discover what it is that these applications are actually about. So you can be more to the point, more precise, and to learn to work within the framework that's provided.
Do they ask for specific expertise, or is it more about experience, more about having the experience to write a proposal, for example?
Well, it depends on the grant and where you apply. actually now writing proposals for fundings is a business on its own.
Oh.
And we've seen a lot of, there is a lot of consultants and companies in Cyprus that just do that. You go and you tell them your idea, and because there is specific way to write and do things and say things in a specific technical bureaucratic language, and they know how to do it, you go, you tell your idea, and they write your proposal, which personally, I find that is not the right way to do things, because the idea is yours.
Exactly.
And you should be able to answer all these questions because you know best what your idea is about. So because we didn't have the money, we've done it. We wrote the proposal on our own from scratch without having the experience. And we were, I don't know, lucky enough or collaborative enough, actually, not lucky enough, because we truly believe in this collaboration and this exchange between the different disciplines. And I think that was one of the key to the success to building the organization and writing a good proposal at the start to kick off this project.
And,
Thank you.
If I may, one thing Veronica, your mic. One thing I could add is coming back to the definition at the beginning from Scott and Vanakantaram, is individuals who are pursuing opportunities without regard to resources. So when you start, you should look for opportunities. You should do your thing yourself. And maybe you get money from some friends. Maybe you work on night, you work on the sides. So you should start the process and opportunities will come. So going back to Urban Gorilla, we were lucky to get after 9-10 months the grant, but for 9-10 months, we did some caritative jobs. We did some small scale work. We had the thing with the bus. We start some retreat. I think we walk dogs to put something in our application saying that we are doing dog walking for people. We did cleaning the streets. We did anything we could do. We asked all our friends if they can give us money. They could give us anything. So at the beginning, you're looking for opportunity without regard to resources. You're pursuing an idea, and slowly things will come. But if you're waiting to get the funding, this will never work. It's the other way around. You start, and if your idea are good, you will get funding. But as Teresa said, funding is something on its own, and it takes some expertise. But you try, you fail, you try again. And usually in the EU funding, you get a grade, like at school. And maybe the first time you get a 5, and you get an 8, and a 12, and a 15. And slowly you learn the tricks.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. And we will talk very soon again. Thank you for this. It was great. It was very interesting. Are you sharing some slides? Can you share some slides with the people?
Yes, we can put a collection together.
A collection, you can send it to me later to share them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. Veronica, René, thank you. Teresa.
Thank you, Anna.
Despina, thank you for the help. It has been
thank you, Despina.
important.
Thank you.
You are welcome anytime to our lectures.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Despina, do contact us.
Okay.
Yes, it'd be nice to talk further.
And anybody else, yes.
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, people.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.